Hello, Kathy.
Hi, Tom. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
Good, good. Tom, how do I get in touch with Karen Spring? How do I pay her?
I thought she sent us an address for
She didn't.
Canada.
Uh, Not to my knowledge. I haven't seen that.
Okay. I think I have it. I think I got it.
Okay, fine. Send it to me tomorrow or later tonight.
Okay.
All right.
And I will, I'll get that to you.
Right. I saw in her bio is she Canadian? Is she Canadian?
Yes.
Hi, Arnie. Vic is
He-
not joining us tonight.
Who isn't Vic?
Right, yeah.
Oh, that's too bad.
Now, can he get this on YouTube? This
I don't know
meeting?
how to upload it to YouTube.
You're recording it.
I'm recording it. I'd have to find some way to get it to him.
No, that's okay. I'll take notes.
It's usually a large file. So I don't know if I fool around with Dropbox or something. Does he have Dropbox?
Yeah, no. I'll take notes. I'm ready to take notes right here. So I'll share that with him.
And Arnie and Margaret told me that we would just see a black box tonight because instead of trying to do it in their computer room, they got a little black box that can hook up to the TV so they can watch the TV, but we can't watch them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
All right,
we
they're
can
just
only
going to be
imagine,
private.
Kathy, we can only imagine what the
Right, what
Matlins
they're
are up
doing, what they're up to.
to. Yeah, I know, right?
What shenanigans they're up to. They're probably eating trained leches dessert.
Be careful what you say about him. He can hear us, but he's not talking to us. So anyhow, this is always the most stressful part is hoping we can connect to another country in Central America.
Wow, okay.
I touched bases with Karen last week just to make sure they were okay after that hurricane devastated a huge part of Honduras. And
Oh,
she's fine,
wow.
so she was planning on being here tonight. And
Wow.
she mailed me today to say she would be here. So we hope that she can be. What time did you sign off yesterday from the Kuslar event?
I signed off about 12:40. I had to be
Oh, you stayed later than
in the
usual.
church.
Yeah, you stayed
Pardon?
later than I thought you were going to.
Now, just to let you know, I spoke with John Keevert. Labels are ready. So I think I'm going to meet him Friday. So the mailing should be in the mail by Monday
Okay,
for the membership.
okay, great. Any idea how many are going out?
Oh, about 240.
If we
So
get,
that'll be my project for this weekend.
is that number certified yet by the state? Boy,
We got to count. We got to count and count and count.
you know, I was telling Irene tonight, I said, you know, I just think of all these movies that you watch where the president really is a bad guy and he's working to overthrow his own government. And I feel like we're right in the midst of that, you know? He's
We
gone,
couldn't even write a movie.
he's
The
gone,
past 4 years, we could not have written a movie.
he's gone underground right now and he's making all these changes with the Defense Department and everything 2 months from when he's got to turn over. What the hell is going on?
He's certified bonkos. I tell you, I don't know.
Wow,
And the people that support him, I just don't know.
I don't get it.
Certified Bonko is a good phrase. I'm going to remember that. Yeah,
Hey,
I
Ernie
really
Wood, he's
am
here.
going to listen, guys. But, well, no, I'm only here. I'm here because nobody else is. So I'm hanging out because I like to see my friends. But
Yeah.
but I am going to go back in the other room and watch it on TV. But I don't. Tom thinks I'm cutting out and just leaving my name up and gonna go do something else. I don't know what, but I'm not because I really want to see this
Yeah, I'm
and hear
expecting a
this.
lot. I'm expecting a lot more people than this, so I don't know. I hope they all remember. We've given them enough notices and warning. And our summer
because it's
attraction
going to be
isn't on yet.
embarrassing.
I'm still waiting
Oh,
for Karen.
what?
I'm still waiting for Karen Spring to join us.
We'll
Well,
wait.
we'll wait.
I hope she remembers that we're a
I'm
different time
amazed that
zone.
she. Ooh.
I told her about it. I'm going to send her an email again just to be sure.
Just for you guys, since we're the only two on,
Terry's
Michael Lagerman sent me a hey Terry.
Hiya.
Michael
Hi,
Lagerman sent
Terry.
me a tweet from Chamorro saying Daniel Ortega hasn't accepted the election, but he did. I had a copy of the official statement he made welcoming President-elect Biden. So there's fake news there too. It's astonishing. There she is.
Karen.
Hey, Karen.
Hi, Karen.
Hi.
Karen, how many
Karen,
years
you
ago?
look-
How many
you
years
can-
ago was it that you came over and escorted Asmund and Bruce and I around Guatemala?
You know what? I think that was in like 2000. Was I already in Honduras at that moment?
You were in Honduras. You were on the ground there.
Okay, so that was, I think, 10 years ago.
Yeah, and you actually look younger now. And I don't know how
Thank
you do
you.
that.
I want some of that stuff. I want some of that stuff.
You have to go to Honduras, Kathy.
I'll go.
How are you doing, Karen?
I'm doing okay. It's been a really hard week, but I guess I'm okay considering the circumstances in the country. So yeah, how are you guys? You guys survived the U.S. elections, or maybe I shouldn't say that yet.
Oh,
It's still painful.
Well,
It's still painful.
we're not there yet. Karen, I'm Arnie Matlin. Hi, I'm on the ROCLA steering committee. I'm the Nicaragua guy, and that's Terry Bisson. Do you know Terry? Terry
Well,
Bisson from the.
She's spoken in Buffalo. She spoke to us in Buffalo a couple of times.
Okay.
So I was in the crowd.
Okay, so she knows.
You know, it's interesting because I think I traveled to Buffalo, didn't I?
Yeah. You didn't have to do Zoom then. We couldn't.
So do you know that was probably my first ever presentation in public as an activist?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I found the one was September 2010, but you gave another one too. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think I gave one shortly after the coup in 2009. So yeah, so it's been a while.
Yeah.
Hey, Grania. Karen, do you know Grania?
No,
I don't think so. No, we haven't met. No.
Hi,
Okay,
Karen.
Grania Marcus.
Welcome.
Steering
Thank
committee.
you.
hi, Karen.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice
You
to
too.
meet you, Karen.
Hello, Grania.
Hey, Tom. Hey. Yes,
Granny, you got your hair cut.
I did. You know why? Because last winter when I had to quarantine for I don't know how long, it got really long. So this time I thought I'd start out with it really short. That way, if I can't get a haircut until June, it won't be too bad.
I tried that once, but it never grew back.
Aw. Hey, Arnie. Oh, he
he
disappeared.
stepped away. Stepped away for a moment.
Yeah. Oh, nice. I think
Karen, I'm
we're
hoping that Asmund will remember to sign on, and Bruce too. I hope they're going to be signing on. And then I have a friend of mine who I'm hoping will sign on shortly, Whitney Scoville, and her husband Adam. although she's got a new 8-week-old baby. I don't know if she'll make it, but they started bringing down delegations to Honduras from the First Presbyterian Church in Chile, and they're working with an organization, I think, that does eyes and stuff. It's more of a medical mission type of thing.
Oh, okay.
So if Whitney signs on, that's who she is, and I'm sure she'll be interested in hearing what you have to say about Honduras.
Great.
How's
That would be
Edwin
great.
going? Edwin.
He's good. It's too bad he's not here. Otherwise, I'd put him in front of the camera so you can see him. But
Yeah.
he's doing well. He's disappointed about all the hurricane and COVID and how hard what it means for the country. But yeah, he's doing well.
Good.
Yeah, we're still waiting on his trial though, so we'll see how that goes.
Oh my gosh.
There's
Scared.
Arnie.
Now we hope to
Tom,
hear
one of
more
the
about
things-
that. What?
Yeah, I will. I'll make a note to talk about it, but sometimes I forget because I feel selfish talking about like my partner and my personal, issues. But so ask me at the end if I forget to talk about it. I'll try to. But one of the things that I wanted to ask you is like, I might actually share my screen because I want to show you a little bit about what's been going on here in the last week. So
Yeah, I think I've already got it. So if
Yeah.
you can share it.
Yep, I see it. I just want to give you the heads up and make sure it's okay if I do that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
Right.
cool.
That is
Great.
fine. So we'll give people a few more minutes to sign in and get with the program. You still, Karen, you still deal with that local hombre, Graham Russell?
Yeah, I coordinate very closely with Graham still.
Yeah.
He's a huge support, especially when Edwin was in prison.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
He was a huge support, and yeah, no, I talk to him very frequently. Yeah.
Oh,
Good.
there's Whitney.
Oh, here's Whitney. Hi, Whitney.
Hi, Whitney.
Meet my friends from the Rochester Committee on Latin America and Buffalo's Latin America Solidarity Conference. And then also Karen Spring is the one who's speaking to us from Honduras tonight. Whitney, I thought you were going to bring the baby.
Yeah.
Tuned. He'll likely show up here shortly. My husband has both kids, and once the 2-year-old bedtime routine begins, I think the baby will end up with me.
I'm sure Adam can handle those kids.
Oh, yes.
Whitney, when was the last time you were in Honduras?
Our church had a crew there in 2016. I personally was there the year before that. So it's been a while.
What's the organization's name again? What do you do?
Shoulder to Shoulder.
And it's eyes or something, isn't it? Medical?
We had done a vision project, yes. So I'm sorry, I think I misspoke. I was there in 2016. Our church was last there in 2018.
Okay.
But our last trip there was focused on bringing vision care treatment to into Buca. We really functioned out of Kamaska and had the local communities come into Kamaska for vision screening and testing, and then to get connected to some vision services. We ended up teaming with the Lions Club. We're out of Sigua. Siguatepeque is where the Lions Club was, and so we teamed with them and made it work. But Shoulder to Shoulder does more medical missions, and they have a school, a bilingual school in Kamaska as well. But they do a lot of like women's health and medical clinics.
Great. Do you know those places, Karen? Have you been in any of those villages? Are they near you?
I've been, Siguatepeque is a city you pass through a lot. It's right in central Honduras. So yeah, I pass through Siguatepeque a lot. And then in Tibuca is an apartment, but I'm not sure if I've been to the village where you guys were. So Intibucá is pretty big, so I've been to a bunch of places, but in that department, but maybe not that exact village, but.
Yeah, Kamaska, it's a beautiful little community. If you ever are in the area, I'd recommend it.
Cool.
Cool. Well, we've still got a few people coming, and I know there's a few more that were planning on joining us, but I think we'll wait just a couple more minutes, Karen, if you don't mind, and then we'll get started. And as people join us, I will try to remember to admit them, and we'll go from there. Terry, any news from Buffalo you want to update us on?
Well, Tom Potts just left yesterday morning to go to Chiapas.
Okay.
And particularly he took some monetary contributions because of the rain. They said continual rains for many days, washing out the roads and things like that in some of these Chiapas communities. And I guess, Karen, you'll be talking something about the effects of this hurricane, which has just sat over top of you, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it hit and then it turned into a tropical storm, but now it's headed up to Florida. I think it's regrouping and going to be a hurricane in category 1 hurricane. But it had, I'll show you the videos and maybe some pictures, but definitely videos of the impacts it left. It was absolutely a disaster for the country.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, Tom Patch, will he be back then? Is he going for a couple weeks or?
Oh yeah, well, he'll be back sometime in December, middle of December, I think.
So he's the one who made, oh no, that's in January we're doing that, right?
Yeah, in January. So he'll be back in time. We made sure he'll be back in time for January, unless COVID is more serious than he thought. But
Okay.
that's why we made sure Bill stayed here, so that Bill Jungles can talk also about it.
Okay. All right. Well, we've waited long enough, I think, and we want to get on with the program for those of us who are on time. So want to introduce Karen Spring to you. She's coming to us from Honduras. And Karen is currently the Honduras-based coordinator for the Honduras Solidarity Network, which I'm sure she'll talk about. And she's a human rights activist and a researcher there. I believe, Karen, you were on the ground when the coup took place. Weren't you there with same time Graham Russell was there and everything when the coup in 2009?
I showed up about 3 weeks after the coup. I was in Guatemala still.
Yeah, I knew you were there pretty close to that time. And so she's been witnessing firsthand the many changes that this coup has brought on, this US-backed coup. And the Honduras Solidarity Network is actually focusing on making the public aware of the United States and the Canadian involvement with our foreign policy in that country and the effects that it's had on it. And so, Karen, too, I have to say, I admire her stamina and her bravery, not only because she's been involved with some very difficult human rights situations down there, including her own husband, but she also put up with me for about a week and 7 or 8 days by being our tour guide and our interpreter in Guatemala when myself and a couple other guys went down as part of my Guatemala mission group, Guatemala Partners. And Karen was there, came back from Honduras and helped us make all our connections and keep us out of trouble there. And I don't know, were you there, Karen, when we overthrew the dictator there, Perez, when he was in office? No, I think that was a trip after you were there. We went and raided the congressional offices and stuff. But Karen is a great lady, and she's been affiliated in the past with Graham Russell, who many of us know from Rights Action, and just an all-around remarkably great person. So, Karen, why don't you try to bring us up to date on recent events and activities, and let us know what's going on now and then let us know what we might be able to do to help.
Sure. So good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being here and for being interested in what's going on in Honduras. It's been a very challenging week here, and I'll get into some of the details. But I wanted to add a couple things to what Tom, the introductions that Tom gave, and thanks so much, Tom, for the invitation. And I am the Honduras-based coordinator, as Tom said, for the Honduras Solidarity Network, and it's a network of over 30 organizations from Canada and the United States, mostly in the United States though. And I started doing the coordinating for the HSN in 2014, and before that I worked with Graham Russell and Rights Action for 4 or 5 years. I started in Guatemala, and then after the coup in 2009, I came to Honduras and started doing human rights work and research here in Honduras and supporting the popular movements and community-based organizations all around the country. So I was saying this before some people got on, but I wanted to say that you know, it's been 11 years since almost 10, 11 years since I've like talked to some of you, or I actually went to Buffalo shortly after the coup in Honduras and gave a talk. And so it's crazy that so much time has passed, but it's great to see that despite all the time passing, people stay really connected and interested and engaged in these issues because they're so important, especially in relation to foreign policy and like US foreign policy, which is something that obviously doesn't get very much attention in the elections and also just in the general discourse in the United States. So I'm Canadian, and I moved to Guatemala in 2008. And so I never actually planned to stay in the region for this long. I thought I was going to be here for a couple months, and I ended up staying here. I met my partner here, who was in prison shortly after the electoral crisis in Honduras in 2017, which a bunch of people were sent to prison for protesting an electoral fraud here in the country. And he was sent to a maximum security prison and held for 1.5 years. It was a military judge that sent him to prison, and his only hearing that he got to make that decision was held on a military base where nobody was allowed to have access to go into the hearing except his lawyer. So I spent the last 1.5 years, I guess, between 2018 and 2019 fighting to get him and 23 other political prisoners out of prison, which was probably one of the most challenging things I've ever done in my life. Just coming up against being a foreigner and doing the work and being targeted for being a foreigner in the country, and then also just knowing and coming to understand what the prison situation is like here in Honduras. And just as the prison situation is very dire in the United States is actually exporting their prison model to several countries around the world. And so Edwin was held in a maximum security prison that literally looked like they picked up a prison in the United States and dumped it here in Honduras. And so I would go to the gates of this prison, which in terms of infrastructure was very fancy and very modern and very US style, but the conditions, the human conditions inside the prison were atrocious and were horrifying. And I spent a lot of time fighting to get basic medical treatment for him and all the other prisoners, getting water, regular running water instead of only having water for 2 hours a day. And so that was a really, really challenging experience. Edwin is still targeted, so he's still like all the other political prisoners that we fought to get released. And thank you to all the solidarity efforts from organizations in Canada, the United States, and in Europe. They were all released pending trial, and we're waiting for their trial to take place next year. COVID has pushed the trials back a year, so they were all supposed to happen this year, but they will all happen next year. So we hope that he won't be sent back to prison, and we will be starting the campaigns again to demand full freedom for all the political prisoners shortly, maybe in the beginning of next year. So I was actually going to talk tonight about, and I will talk about what does a Biden presidency mean in Honduras and in Central America. But a week ago, as many as you, maybe you missed it, because I know that there was the elections going on and there was all this attention on the U.S. elections, and everything else around the world sort of didn't exist while the U.S. elections was going on. But Honduras was hit by Hurricane Eta, which it basically, the rain started here last Monday, but the hurricane, when it hit Nicaragua first, the eye of the hurricane, it started just pouring rain in parts of Honduras. And then the storm, it downgraded from a Category 4 hurricane to a tropical storm. It passed through Honduras, a little bit into Guatemala, and now it's headed up to Florida. And it's picking up strength again, and will likely hit Florida as a Category 1 hurricane. But for Honduras, this hurricane turned tropical storm was absolutely catastrophic. Half of, I would say half of the country is flooded. And I'm talking, in some areas of the country, entire communities are underwater. And so many people, thousands of people have had to flee their homes. And there are currently, according to government numbers, there are 88,000 people that have been displaced. And there are about 10,000 people in shelters. And there are so many people that are disappeared, where they don't know where they are. Their family members are looking for them. Wednesday of last week, water just started to rise. It rose very quickly. People didn't have any time to evacuate. The government didn't give any evacuation orders, and people were basically surprised by the water filling their houses in 10 to 15 minutes and not having the appropriate time to escape. And then Wednesday night, the water started really rising quickly because the rivers collapsed, and the sewer systems that were built to sort of handle some of the flooding in the old former US-owned banana plantations that used to flood in Honduras's history. It's known as, the Banana Republic. And so the banana companies, if you look back into the history of Honduras, talked about the atrocious tropical storms and flooding that characterized Honduras and the banana operations in Honduras. And so, in several years ago, when Honduras was hit by a mass hurricane, Hurricane Mitch in 1998, they built, a canal to sort of absorb a lot of the flooding and a lot of the rainwaters to prevent this type of situation from happening again. But because of the neglect of the government over long periods of time, this special sewer system was not able to withstand the high levels of water, and basically all the water spilled out into the communities. Wednesday night, the water started rising very quickly, and by Thursday afternoon, many communities and people around the San Pedro Sula area in northern Honduras were on their rooftops waiting to be rescued by rescue boats or helicopters. And there was no access to food. There was very little ability for people to get into the water and actually get out get out off their rooftops, because there was really heavy water or current. The water was rushing too fast, and it was too dangerous even to take in boats with very strong motors. And so today there are still people in areas that are still on their rooftops waiting to be rescued. And in some areas where the water has gone down and people are able to actually walk into their communities, there is a layer of mud up to about your knees. And people's entire houses are totally destroyed, if not, totally damaged by water. And a lot of people, when I'm sharing images on social media, are saying, wow, this looks a lot like what happened with Hurricane Katrina in the United States. And a lot of the places in New Orleans never really recovered from the significant damage of that flooding. And that's in a country, granted, in a very, very neglected part of the United States. But in Honduras, that's absolutely catastrophic given the poverty and the situation in the country. So I'm just going to share my screen because I want to show just a couple of pictures just so people can get a sense of what people are sort of facing here. And then I'll get a little bit more into my, my talk. I'm just trying to, here we go. So I'm not sure if you can see my screen. Okay. Can you hear me? Maybe give me a thumbs up. Okay, perfect. So this is the Honduras Solidarity Network's Twitter. I've been posting updates related to the efforts and the relief efforts that are going on, but I wanted to show you some, a video. This is the San Pedro Sula. Sorry, I'm gonna open the screen first. This is the San Pedro Sula Airport, which is one of the 2 international airports on the mainland. I don't know how many people speak Spanish, but this will give you a sense of just what's happened with this airport in a really critical economic center of the country. I don't know if you can hear the audio. So I guess you couldn't hear the Spanish audio, but so that was the airport that was totally flooded out in northern Honduras. And I wanted to show you another video of people. This circulated on Thursday of last week, and it's of people waiting on their rooftops to be rescued, just to give you a sense of the situation and the levels, the water levels. So that's like a really quick clip, but there's several pictures and videos circulating of the situation in the country. A lot of people remain on the rooftops, like I mentioned. And people can go to the Honduras Solidarity Network's Twitter or Facebook page to get more information or to see more videos and pictures of the amount of destruction in the country. So I think, you know, Honduras is obviously in a really difficult situation. And it was already in a really difficult situation with COVID-19. And before that, I know that many of you probably know a lot about, you know, the migrant caravans or the refugee caravans that were fleeing Honduras and that started leaving Honduras shortly after the 2017 electoral fraud. That basically, for me, was the last straw where Hondurans said, you know what, we went to the polls, we tried to vote and get a new government, and then we went to the streets and we protested and we said there was a fraud, and we said that our votes were not being counted, and we were ignored. The United States government came in and supported the electoral results. The Organization of American States, which sends, you know, electoral observers all over the region, also sort of looked the other way and ignored the serious allegations of electoral fraud. And not just electoral fraud on the day of the elections, but also the fact that the current president, Juan Orlando Hernandez, illegally ran for re-election. And in Honduras, re-election is totally illegal as by the Constitution. And that's exactly the reason that the coup happened. If you remember, the people that carried out and planned the coup said they did it because Mel Zelaya wanted to stay in power and that he was trying to be a dictator, and so therefore they overthrew him because he wanted to extend his time in power. And so fast forward 10 years later, and that's exactly what the government of Juan Orlando Hernandez did. And he achieved it, and then he got the stamp of approval from the United States government that both stood beside him as he was declared a victor and stood beside the electoral tribunal as they were counting the so-called votes and tallying up covering up the electoral fraud and tallying up the votes. And so Honduras, basically since 2018, has sort of continued spiraling into this crisis that started long before in 2009, when I met some of you and when I talked to you about Honduras like 11 years ago. And Honduras has never gotten out of that spiral. And I think the migrant caravans are a really good example of, you know, what happens when people are consistently denied the ability to democratically elect their government, when they are not able to participate in a way where they feel like they're being heard. They feel like there's really no choice. And so they decide to vote with their feet and go to the US and Mexico border. And it's not just they're doing that because of a political statement, they're doing it also because the conditions in the country are very, very dire. Economically, Honduras is the second poorest country in the hemisphere after Haiti. Some people say it's Nicaragua, but I mean, Nicaragua has a lot of social programs that Honduras absolutely doesn't have. And in that whole 11 years that the situation has gotten worse here for security, environmentalists and land defenders, Honduras has become one of the most dangerous places to be a journalist, to be a lawyer, to be a land defender. You know, a lot of people cite the murder of the well-known environmentalist, indigenous activist Berta Cáceres, who was murdered in her home in 2016, as being an example of somebody, despite being so well-known internationally, despite being someone that won the Goldman Environmental Prize the year before she was murdered, you know, the government did not shy away at killing her, and the wealthy class in the country did not think twice about killing her either. And so all these crises have sort of remained in Honduras. And then, and the United States government has very much continued to support the government. The State Department has certified Honduras on human rights issues every single year since the coup. They say that Honduras has shown that they are addressing corruption, that they're addressing impunity, which is, Honduras has like a 90% plus impunity rate for murders of environmentalists, land defenders, journalists, and lawyers, the LGBT community as well. And so the State Department keeps putting their stamp of approval on the behavior of the Honduran government. And then most recently in the last 2 years, since 2018, the US government has stood by the Juan Orlando Hernandez government financially and politically, as Juan Orlando Hernandez, the president, is named in New York courts as being a co-conspirator in trafficking large quantities of cocaine into the United States. And so I'm not sure how many people know much about that. I can get into a little bit more detail about it if you are interested. Maybe give me a show of hands of people that know about it or have heard about the drug trafficking allegations of the Honduran president. Okay, so 2 of you, okay. So I'll give a little bit of a summary before I move on to sort of what this all means in the context of the US elections. So in 2018, Juan Orlando Hernandez's baby brother, Tony Hernandez, was flying out of the Houston airport, and he was arrested by the DEA and other US agents. And he was taken to New York, where the New York Southern District Court pressed serious charges against him, 4 different charges related to large-scale drug trafficking and trafficking hundreds of kilos of cocaine into the United States. And then in November of 2009, Juan Orlando Hernandez's brother, who remained in custody and in jail in the United States, went to trial. And in that trial process, which I went to in New York, the prosecutors made very clear that the reason that Juan Orlando Hernandez's brother, Tony Hernandez, was able to traffic all of this cocaine into the United States was because he was using military helicopters, Honduran military helicopters. He was using the Honduran police to take these shipments of drugs that were flying into the eastern part of Honduras and then crossing on land, these large shipments of drugs over to the border with Guatemala and then passing them up through Mexico as part of El Chapo Guzman's drug trafficking networks in Central America. And so El Chapo Guzman also helped fund President Juan Orlando Hernandez's illegal reelection, gave him $1 million to help him be reelected. And all of this came out in this New York court case. And so Juan Orlando Hernandez is the current president of Honduras, but he's also named as a co-conspirator, along with his brother and several other people, including former police, Honduran police and Honduran military, in this drug conspiracy. And so Honduras Hondurans are not only dealing with a president that ran for legal re-election, they're not just dealing with a president that committed widespread electoral fraud, they're also dealing with a president that's in the presidency, using his presidency to further his own drug trafficking interests and furthering his own drug business, which has been fundamental to consolidating his power, but also fundamental to the entire way that the state operates. So if you think about it, if your president is involved in trafficking drugs, it's kind of like President Trump almost. You know, he's taking care of his own economic interests while he's in office. So he's promoting, taking every opportunity that he can to go to his golf resorts and getting the Secret Service to, you know, rent rooms from him, because his focus is like to grow his own economic benefit from his position in office. And I'm really sorry if there's any Trump supporters here. I think it's the best example. But here you have a president that is in the presidency, and he's also this known drug trafficker. And so obviously what he's going to be doing is using that office to further his drug interests. He's not going to be using that time in his office to make sure that the Honduran bridges won't collapse if there's a hurricane. He's not in that office to make sure that there's actually, you know, human rights training happening so that Honduran police don't commit widespread and gross human rights violations. He's there to further his drug interests, and also to make sure that he's protected from any sort of prosecution or any sort of chances to be extradited to the United States. And so that's what Hondurans are dealing with. And so in my 11 years of being here, Honduras, it's sad because I've seen Honduras get worse and worse and worse over time. And the thing that's the most frustrating is that it doesn't matter, it seems that it doesn't matter what this president does. He still enjoys US support. And the United States government keeps investing in the so-called private sector in Honduras. They keep sending military aid, they keep sending police aid, and they keep standing beside, like diplomats of the State Department in the US Embassy here, keep standing beside this co-conspirating drug trafficker that's the president of Honduras. And this isn't me saying this, this is the New York Southern District Court saying this. And so, you know, it's been very disappointing to see how, you know, there's significant allegations or accusations of other leaders or other presidents in the region, you know, being involved in so-called drug trafficking and being dictators and being narco dictators or drug dictators, but then seeing it here happen and seeing what it means for the entire country and the United States not doing anything about it. Or continuing to support and dump money and dump political support into the country. So in 2014, and this is sort of, I just want to talk a little bit more about what I think about what's going to happen with Biden, because I don't want to talk for too long. I want to leave lots of time for discussion and questions. But in 2014, I think some of you probably remember that there was the unaccompanied crisis of minors that were flooding to the US border. And what happened is the United States, in response to all these unaccompanied minors or these children and these families going to the border, the United States proposed the Alliance for Prosperity for the Northern Triangle, which was an investment of $750 million for the 3 Central American countries. And another name for this Alliance for Prosperity was the Biden Plan. And so at the time, you know, Biden was the vice president. And so Biden basically presented this package, which in Honduras turned out to be this package that sort of furthered privatization of public services, that sought to privatize the National Electrical Energy Company, that led to huge increases in energy prices. It turned out to be a huge focus on privatizing infrastructure and privatizing public institutions. So Hondurans started taking to the streets to stop and protest against the privatization of healthcare and the privatization of education. And so the Biden plan was another very similar in the history of, you know, the US relations with Honduras. There was nothing different about it. It was, again, a huge focus on support for military, support for police, but at the same time, support for a neoliberal model that is driving more and more Hondurans into poverty and leading to widespread privatization. And so, you know, fast forward to the Trump administration, Trump just created a new institution called the International Development Finance Corporation, which is supposed to be promoting US companies abroad. And they sort of consolidated different offices in the USAID and the export, I can't remember what the name of it is in the United States, but it's like the Export Development Corporation, because I get mixed up with the Canadian one, that basically promotes, you know, US companies abroad. And he sort of consolidated them all into this International Development Finance Corporation. And the International Development Finance Corporation just announced that they signed a memorandum of understanding with Honduras to committing to spending $1 billion investments in the private sector in Honduras over 3 years. And so this is sort of coming under a larger plan called Growth in the Americas, which is a Trump administration initiative. And in Spanish, it's called America Crece, Growth in the Americas. And so this is for all of Latin America, but it's a Trump sort of initiative. And so obviously seeing that it's going to go, all this investment's going to go into the private sector, and all this investment's going to go into finding these really profitable markets for US companies, I'm obviously very concerned about what that's going to mean for Honduras, considering that it has not worked in the past. The Biden plan was very similar to that. It led to massive construction of hydroelectric dams, and it led to widespread protests in the country that led to a whole bunch of political unrest in the country. And so, you know, I'm thinking, okay, well, and maybe this is what you're thinking too. Well, like, okay, well, this is a Trump administration initiative. Trump lost the elections, or although he hasn't admitted it yet. And so, you know, it's going to be different with Biden. But in fact, I was looking under Biden's plan on his campaign website for Central America. And he also is promoting, you know, development to the private sector in Honduras, I think 4 million over 4 years. And again, it's very, very similar to the wording in the Alliance for Prosperity in 2014. So as somebody that works on the ground here, and somebody that sort of sees the impacts that these development plans that the United States has promoted for so many years, I'm really concerned that Biden is going to be more of the same in terms of promoting US foreign policy, a very problematic US foreign policy in Latin America. And I don't think that it's all like gloom and gloom, because I know that in the United States, there's a huge effort to sort of push the Democrats to a much more progressive agenda, and to get progressive Democrats in positions of, in powerful positions in congressional and Senate committees. And I think, you know, I'll sort of end here, but I wanted to say that I think there's several things that we can do. And I'm sure as an organization, or as the 3 organizations that are part of this talk tonight, are sort of already thinking about, you know, how can we push the Democrats to get progressive people in positions of power to sort of change domestic policy, but also change the trajectory of US policy in the whole world, but also for me, you know, in Central America, so that there aren't these problems of these migrant caravans fleeing to the United States border, and that, you know, these kids and these families are not separated at the border. And so that, you know, there isn't a huge focus on a huge, like, sort of migration issue at the border with the United States. And so we need to get the United States to address these root causes, but not the root causes as in like, oh, we're going to invest in the private sector, but actually invest in community-led development, and stop pushing privatization and like a hyper-capitalist model in countries that are just not able to privatize healthcare and education, and that need public healthcare and education. Another thing that I think there's a lot of efforts to get Nancy Pelosi to put progressive people on the Foreign Affairs Committee in Congress. so that because there is a really important law that has been proposed by over 100 Democrats that calls for the United States to end military and support and funding for the military and the police in Honduras until there are certain conditions met. And that's called the Berta Cáceres Human Rights in Honduras Act. And after these elections and when the new Congress is seated, this act will have to be reintroduced into Congress. And up until this moment, the Foreign Affairs Committee was chaired by Eliot Engels, who lost his re-election. And so Nancy Pelosi can replace Engels. And Engels actually blocked taking that bill, the Berta Cáceres Human Rights Act, and presenting it to the committee, the Foreign Affairs Committee, which basically, ensured that it wouldn't advance and that it wouldn't go anywhere. And so now that we have opportunities where that isn't the case, we are really going to be pushing this Berta Cáceres Human Rights in Honduras Act, because we feel that, if the Honduran government is dumping money into the US government is dumping money into the Honduran military and police, then they should be demanding that basic human rights standards are upheld, and they should be demanding that investigations are happening to very key human rights cases.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
So I'm going to end there, but I just wanted to say that that if people are interested in supporting relief for the hurricane, which is sort of going to be this ongoing issue in Honduras, the Honduras Solidarity Network is raising money. We're sending all of the money. None of the money goes to hiring anybody. None of it goes to paying any salaries. 100% of it goes directly to community-based organizations that have been doing the work before they started getting funding, and they will continue doing it after they get funding. Very, very solid organizations, both community-based organizations and also relief teams that are, mostly led by women, that are going into the shelters, that are dropping food off, that are getting boats out to go and rescue people that still remain on their rooftops. They're cooking home-cooked food and meals and taking them to the shelters and taking them on the boats to people that can't, that for whatever reason don't want to leave wherever they are. Some people don't even want to leave the rooftops because they're too traumatized. So people can support that. I'll put that link in the chat. No pressure, no obligation. I'm just throwing it out there in case people are interested. So I think that I'll leave it there and open it up for discussion or questions.
Anybody have any questions? You want to raise your hand and unmute yourself. Grania?
I unmuted myself. Karen, my question has to do with the long history of U.S. abuse of Latin American countries, and what are the groups that we need to ally ourselves with on the ground in Honduras to push the message that the neoliberal model is not good, that the corruption. So it's partly getting rid of the president, which both Democrats and Republicans have cooperated with in Honduras, but it's also supporting the groups on the ground that are doing the organizing against the U.S. Interventions, I'm going to say, and also the U.S. following this neoliberal economic model.
Yeah, so I think being connected to the grassroots is obviously something that I really promote to everybody in the US and Canada, because we need to take our demands and the voices of people here, because Hondurans know what they want and they have their own demands as to what the US government should and should not be doing. So some really fantastic groups, I can write them in the chat as well. COPIN is Berta Cáceres's organization that she started long ago in the 90s, and they do really fantastic work looking at and denouncing the militarization in the country. And I'll put it in the chat right now. There's another one that is an Afro-Indigenous Garifuna group that is called the Black Fraternal Organization of Honduras, OFRENE. And so it's hard for people in the US and Canada to communicate directly with these groups, but it's easy if you're on social media, if you're on Facebook or if you're on Twitter, to share their stuff, to follow what they're doing and to what they're posting. The Honduras Solidarity Network tries really hard to share the voices from the grassroots in English to people in the United States and Canada. Rights Action is another great group that does that as well. Since I kind of came out of Rights Action, I've sort of continued a lot of what they do in the work that I do. And so our Facebook and our Twitter is in English, and we share those voices of those organizations and a whole bunch of other Honduran organizations. And we try and bring a US perspective to it as well. So it's like a Honduran organization will say, well, we were shot at with live rounds by the Tigre police. And then the Honduras Solidarity Network will share and say, well, the Tigre police is vetted, trained, and funded by the United States government. This is what they're doing in Honduras. And that's sort of the type of message that we put on our social media. Some groups in the United States that are promoting some really good initiatives around foreign policy in Latin America. Code Pink just put out, and I don't know if people are familiar with Code Pink, based in DC, but they put out this letter where they focus a lot on, I think it was written, I think, for Joe Biden's team, and they are asking for, it's called the new good neighbor policy. And I think many of you will remember the old good neighbor policy before my time, actually. But they kind of named it that because they say it's time for the United States to reconsider their relationship with Latin America. And you can go on their website and check that out. And it sort of covers all of Latin America, ending neoliberalism, like ending militarization, like stopping interventions in Latin America, and that problematic history that the United States has continued in Honduras, but all across the Latin America. So that's sort of those are sort of the recommendations I would make. I'll put those names in the chat for people, and I hope that they're helpful. But definitely check out our Facebook and our Twitter, the Honduras Solidarity Network as well.
Okay, Terry?
Yeah, so thinking about the other way that, of course, the US squeezes groups directly, exerts power to squeeze the grassroots groups, but it also apparently has a throttle hold on the Organization of American States. And I don't really understand. I wonder if you could just give us any insight about that. In other words, if the US really, is the Organization of American States just bad by itself, or is it act badly because the US forces it to act badly? And is it done through the State Department or through the military, or can the president have an effect on that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and I actually don't fully know the answer. I think that Almagro is the head of the OAS, and he has been very key in supporting coups, like for example in Bolivia. He's been very key in, it's interesting because Almagro from the OAS denounced the electoral fraud in Honduras and tweeted saying that there was widespread fraud and they needed to repeat the election. And then he backpedaled quickly. So the OAS in Latin America basically has lost its legitimacy as this power or this institution that's able to negotiate and assist in the promotion of democracy. And Almagro actually was up for re-election, I think, last year. And there was an effort to get him out, but I think that he had done a lot of his political work behind the scenes to ensure that he was reelected by a lot of the key US allies and allied countries in the region. So I don't entirely, I would say that a lot, I mean, the OAS has definitely taken the State Department position on a lot of different issues in Latin America. And I would say that in relation to Honduras, I think, the OAS's or Almagro's backpedaling on the electoral fraud was because the United States government then said, after it happened, like, wait a second, we're going to certify the fraud and we're going to move forward, and Juan Orlando Neves is going to be the president. And as soon as the United States government did that, the OAS fell in line as well. And so I think that the OAS is very much aligned to US interests in the region. I don't really know what to do about that though, except supporting a really strong campaign denouncing what the OAS is doing and the examples of how they're going about so-called democracy promotion or promoting, anti-democratic principles in the region, but also pushing for like a new representation or a new president or a new secretary general of the OAS and getting rid of Almagro. I don't know if that answers your question.
It's very helpful, sure.
Karen, after the coup, there was people on the streets for months, very, very well sustained, and very dedicated to overturning the coup. Did anything in the form of a viable political party come out of that group, or was it just disbanded at the end of it all, or what happened?
No, actually, a political party did come out of that. Hondurans, after the 2009 coup, people were on the streets for months and months and months, and I was on the streets with them, and we were getting tear gassed very frequently, and arrested and some people beaten for months, trying to overturn the coup. And then Manuel Zelaya, who was the president that was overthrown, wasn't allowed back in the country for a long time. And when he was able to officially come back, he formed the Libre Party, which is the Liberty and Refoundation Party in English, or Libre, which Libre in Spanish. And so they formed the Libre Party. The Libre Party actually is one of the strongest political forces in the country in terms of political parties. The Libre Party would be like a serious challenger to the Republican and Democratic Party in the United States. There really is no third party to challenge those two parties in the US. Well, in Honduras, for a long time, it was like that here as well. There was two parties, National Party and Liberal Party, very similar, Republicans, Democrats. But in Honduras. And then after the coup in 2011, they formed a Libre Party was formed. And Libre is sort of a mixed bag. It has very, very significant and very progressive, like the party was based on very, very progressive ideas. So no to privatization, no to neoliberalism, no to US intervention, and a whole bunch of different, very specific and detailed political beliefs and ideologies. And over the years, it's sort of gotten a little bit watered down, but there remains a very, very strong base and very strong support around the country. And, the electoral fraud in 2017, basically, if the fraud didn't happen, the Libre Party would be in a position of power. They basically formed an alliance with a smaller party, and their candidate would have been in power. So, there's no denying that the Libre Party has a huge amount of power in Honduras. But again, the United States government does not like the Libre Party. They do not like progressive political parties in Latin America that challenge the neoliberal development model, that challenge the US domination and intervention in the region. And that's exactly what the Libre Party represents. And so the Libre Party is sort of undergoing its own resistance to that, and they continue today, just like in so many different countries in Latin America where there's a significant progressive parties and also a significant voice saying we do not like what the United States government is doing in Latin America.
Thank you. Other questions from anybody? Wow. Oh, Terry's back. Go ahead, Terry.
Well, Karen, this will seem like a very, very strange question, but it seems that Honduras voted in the UN in the last few weeks to rid the world of nuclear weapons. And they were the 5th signer on this. And therefore, I hear on the internet that it means that the UN will move somehow to talk about the abolition of nuclear weapons, to talk about it. So how could Honduras have taken this step when it's surely not popular with the United States? Had you
I
heard?
have no idea. Good
Yeah,
question. I mean, I don't know what you guys think of the positioning of you know, the Democrats or the Trump administration versus like maybe a Biden position on that. But you know, I think one thing that I've come to understand in Honduras, especially during the Trump administration, is that the chaos that you see in the United States and the Trump administration is so reflected. It's so reflected here in the way that the State Department and the U.S. Embassy works here. It's like you talk, nobody in the embassy really knows what to tell you. There's just this mass confusion, and there's this like changing constantly, like not knowing, you know, what position they should be taking on issues here in Honduras, and then having these discussions with the Honduran government. And so, you know, for me, when Edwin was in prison, I was lobbying in the US, talking to all these congressional offices, and they would tell me something. And then I would come here and I would talk to different people in the embassy. And I was just like, oh my goodness, it's like so hard to be able to create any sort of change or understand like what the heck the communication is between the State Department in DC, congressional offices, and then key senators that have a lot of power. And then what happens here in the State Department and the communication and the decision making. And it's such a mess. And so, you know, there's a part of me that, you know, maybe that the Honduran government had conversations with the US government about that. Maybe it's the Honduran government's sole decision to support something like that in the UN. Like, I really don't know. And what the Trump administration has done is made it so hard for activists like myself to understand, like, how the heck do we, like, why the heck is the Honduran government doing this? What does it have to do with US policy and then the support that the United States government gives to Honduras? And I'm sure that's like all around the world, right? So I have no idea. That's like the really long answer to your question.
good. Thank you.
Anyone else? So Karen, I guess we could go on your website if you want to give that to us again for the Honduras Solidarity Network. And are you currently taking donations through that, or is it the other organizations that you had in the chat for helping with the rescue effort there as far as the hurricane?
Yes, so the Honduras Solidarity Network has a really embarrassing and awful website. So I would direct people to, mostly because we're really like, you know, we're trying to make it work with only one staff person, which is me, based in Honduras, constantly dealing with crises all the time. But our Facebook is much better and our Twitter is much better. And so the Honduras Solidarity Network collects, like, you know, throughout the years has collected donations to support my work here. But with this hurricane relief fund, it's a fundraiser we're doing. The money does go to Ofrene, one of the organizations I wrote in the chat. And it goes to other organizations that I didn't write in the chat, but that are, you know, also really amazing. And yeah, it goes directly to grassroots organizations, and Graham supports a lot of the same ones as well. So yeah, that's where the money goes for the Hurricane Relief Fund. And I'm just like an awful fundraiser in general. So I would say don't support the HSN, support the Hurricane Relief Fund. Because it's really, really needed, and it like 100% of the money goes there. And when people call me up and they're like, Karen, like, people are begging us for diapers and they're begging us for like toothpaste, you know, in the shelters. And I'm like, okay. And I send them like $500 like quickly so that they can go and get that stuff to the shelters. So it's so needed, and so, and people are so thankful for all the donations. So I would probably tend to send people more to if they wanted to donate, and it had the ability to donate, to go to the Hurricane Relief Fund.
Okay, Grania?
Yeah, I I believe in relief funds when they're needed, but I'm much more concerned with supporting real efforts for change. And I think ROCLA has a long history of doing both. So I would like to know if once the Biden administration, the transition has taken place and we start to see the people that are going to be running, for instance, the State Department, can we keep in touch with you specifically about what's happening with these groups so that we put our money where our mouth is and we put it in an organization that's doing effective work on the ground?
Sure, and I'm actually really glad that you said that because there's a lot of hurricane relief efforts happening. So many GoFundMes, really, really big NGOs, and I think it's all good because it's all kind of needed in an emergency. But one of the things that the Honduras Solidarity Network does is we support organizations that have a structural analysis. So people and organizations that are looking at like, why did this hurricane happen? Climate change. Why are the poorest people most affected, and what do we need to do to change our government and make our policies better? And so we support organizations that have this long-term vision and that are committed to the end of, the struggle. And that's something that I promote really strongly with the HSN is like, it's not, we operate on that kind of model. So like supporting organizations with a structural analysis. And then after the elections, the hurricane stuff is going to take months to clean up, if not years. So hopefully our fundraiser will still be going and it won't die, because a lot of relief funds die with the emergency and then people move on and get busy with other things. Fair enough. It's just like the way humans are. So yeah, it would be great to stay in touch. Once we're actually, Hurricane Eta hit at the worst time to do any sort of congressional work because everybody's like in transition phase and seeing what the heck's going to happen with Trump not wanting to leave the White House. And so we will probably be picking up efforts to really push Biden on issues of really addressing the root causes of and really promoting these voices in Honduras that have alternatives to how to actually address the root causes, different from what the United States has constantly promoted and failed at for several years. So let's definitely stay in touch.
Karen, along those lines, keeping in touch, what can we do? We represent 2 or 3 different Latin American organizations. There's people here from different churches and everything too. Some are very active and progressive. What can we do when it comes time for Edwin and the other people in his group to go to trial to help you guys out? How can we support you?
That's a good question, and thank you for reminding me to address that. So I think we were actually going to start campaigning and start doing some social media and some circulating sign-on letters for the political prisoners in November, but because of this crisis, it's going to be pushed back until next year, January. So we will do sign-on letters, and we will be asking people to call the State Department or asking people to talk to their congressional representatives about the political prisoners. And then we also do other campaigns that are similar where we ask for similar things. So we've been working a lot on other campaigns, and what I can do is try and forward you guys the actions that we're promoting as the HSN, which is across the board on different issues, and share them with you so that you can decide if you're able to participate or not.
Okay, that'd be great. Be sure to put my email down there. I'm not a Facebook or Twitter guy. I don't like their agreements that you're supposed to sign up on, so I've stayed away from them. But keep me on your email list, and I'll certainly spread the word up here in any way that I can to be support to you.
Okay, great. I will do that. I also wanted to let people know I host a podcast. It's every 2 weeks. It's focused on Honduras. I share human rights stories, and I connect them with North American policy and global issues. So it's a new project that I've worked on. And so the idea is to sort of really take the voices of Hondurans and put them in a US and Canadian context and share people on our podcast. And I send out those episodes every 2 weeks. And so people can let me know if they want to get those emails. I don't bombard people with emails. It's just like, oh, hey, a new episode is available. Click here if you want to listen to it. And so if people want to be on that list too, you can let me know. And I might, when we do campaigns with the HSN, I also include that in my podcast or my emails that go out as well. So let me know if people want on that.
That sounds exciting. Yeah, put me on it.
Is there a channel that we could subscribe to for those of us who follow podcasts? Like, is it your name or is it HSN?
So my podcast is called Honduras Now, and you can get it on Apple Podcasts, and the website is hondurasnow.org. And so you can listen to it on my website, or you can go to podcasts, like wherever you listen, like Spotify, Apple, and like it's there as well.
Cool. Any other questions? Well, I think that's going to wrap it up then for tonight. I think it was a very interesting talk, and Karen, we're so grateful to you for being able to spend the time to bring us up to speed and up to date. And really, we're so far away, but if there's anything we can do to help, please let me know and I'll get it spread around.
Great. Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and let's hope that we don't have to wait another 10 or 11 years to touch base again.
Well,
like face-to-face, Zoom face-to-face, right?
Sounds like a lot of fun, so we'll have to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, there's Michelle Springmore. She's finally coming to us. Hello there. Good to see you again.
Karen, I edit the newsletter for ROCLA, and we're just coming out with one now, but I would find it really helpful to, can I at least get links to your podcasts from you or do I just have to look on hondurasnow.org?
Yeah, you can go to hondurasnow.org and go to show notes, and all the show notes are posted. My next one will come out on Friday, and it'll be all about the hurricane and experience of people, Hondurans doing rescue operations, getting people off the rooftops, and what Hondurans have to say about the US and Canadian aid that is coming into the country to support relief efforts. The last week's was about the Washington's new investment plan for Latin America, and how it won't really change anything. So it's all there, and you can take snippets of it or like a summary of it, or just send me an email and maybe I can write something really quickly for your newsletter so it can get out there as well.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yep.
Well,
Great.
thank you
Well,
all.
thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much.
And
Please don't
thank
wait 10
you
or
all
11
for
years.
joining us. And keep safe, keep healthy, and keep sane if you can during these political times up here. And we'll get through this together, as they say.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think don't all Americans need like a Canadian support person now that like you guys are going through your own political mess? I mean, I should be saying the same thing. We have a hurricane here, but I don't know, man. You guys have quite the challenge up there with somebody that doesn't want to give in to the electoral results. So good luck. Stay sane up there in the United States.
Thanks, Karen. Bye, everybody.
Have a good night,
Good night.
everybody.
Thank you.
Nice
Be well.
meeting you all.
Be well. Be safe.
Goodbye now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.